For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. So what's happening is a lot of geopolitical fuss about Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the US House Speaker, visiting Taiwan, as you can imagine. It's had a bit of an effect on stocks, actually, but more yesterday, really, in the United States than this morning. Not an enormous amount of movement. Chinese stocks actually doing reasonably well this morning, inching up. Shanghai Composite up 0.4%, Hong Kong up 0.6%. Taiwan, unsurprisingly, is calling these military exercises that China is conducting around its coast effectively a blockade. And there could be, spiraling tensions and the rest of it. I think most people understand that Taiwan computer chips power everything from smartphones to cars and watches and fridges, and it's where some of the world's biggest technology companies actually still go to get semiconductors, and the contract semiconductor makers accounted for more than 60% of the total chip foundry revenue. So what's being halted there for the next few days? Who knows how long these military drills will actually continue, but this is what Taiwan's saying overnight. Alibaba in China could see its revenue decline for the first time, but it could signal the bottom for where things are going. It is the Chinese e-commerce giant, as you know. It's reporting fiscal first quarter revenue down about 1.2%. It's not a huge amount, but I think the important thing is that when you start getting results from companies like this, you can take a pretty clear view of what's happening to the economies, and particularly there's a slowdown in the Chinese economy. They feel as though they're touching the bottom of that right now. Let's turn our attention to the United States. Dow futures up just a little overnight and this morning. The three major averages notched a second day of losses, and basically that visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan is causing a lot of political alarm there. However, this is quite interesting, actually. I noted this morning that this James Bullard, one of the Fed's governors, who has been over the years very, very hawkish about interest rates in the United States. He's saying that even given the interest rate rises, as far as the Fed's concerned, there could be a soft landing. There might be a soft landing for the economy, and he says that there's actually a good chance of that. He's the St. Louis Fed president, James Bullard. There he is. Right, the UK now. A lot of surveys out this morning, one in particular talking about a deepening recession. Millions will be left without savings, 2 million people in fuel poverty. The bills will be very, very much higher. I'll come on to the cost of living in a moment. UK travellers facing higher fare increases. BA, I said yesterday, it was going to stop ticket prices for 7 days. This is very much likely to be extended over the summer. It'll hit British Airways. It'll also have an effect on Heathrow, and it may actually not resolve itself until September, which means a very, very flat summer indeed. So back to that cost of living crisis, and I think that what's important about this is what actually motorists pay for fuel pumps. And BP has said, we talked about its surging results yesterday. It's actually not doing terribly well in terms of public perception, and most people are feeling there should be a windfall tax. What Bernard Looney, who's the CEO of BP, is saying, and this is going to be their response to everything, is, look, we pay big taxes. The oil price was below zero 2 years ago. It's not now. I was reporting losses 2 years ago. Nobody's worried about that. Now we have surging oil prices. We pay further taxes. It's down to the UK government to decide where they actually put that. But I would point out that the cost of filling a tank has fallen by £5 in July. It should be a lot more, according to the RAC. So in other words, average petrol prices have fallen about 9 pence over the month to 182. The RAC, Royal Automobile Association, says that level should be 160 odd right now, and it's not fairly reflecting the way, in fact, 167 pence, not really reflecting the way that wholesale prices have come down. Again, if you're talking about this, it is actually worth reflecting on what the retailers are actually doing, not so much the wholesale oil prices and the wholesale markets. For what it's worth, the wholesale price markets, as you can imagine, not doing a great deal before the OPEC Plus meeting later today. That's the global view.
Thank you, Michael. Well, Nancy Pelosi is in Taiwan in pursuit of truth, justice, and the American way. But at what cost? Because obviously China is already making their military presence felt, saber-rattling and bullying Taiwan as usual. But they now have a list of around 200 items that have been suspended. Imports, have been suspended from Taiwan, including citrus fruits, semiconductors and what have you, which you mentioned. How far will China go to express their chagrin economically? And might that affect global trade in any way? Would it affect trade with the U.S.? How do you think it's all going to play out? Because they're definitely not going to take this lying down.
I wish I could answer your question again. I think it's something that we have to watch day by day, don't we? I think there's a lot of brinkmanship being played. No question that the United States is making quite a big gesture by sending Nancy Pelosi, whatever she's going to say, to Taiwan. We know that the Chinese view Taiwan very differently from the way Taiwan sees itself, and therefore it will see this as sending her there as a provocation. And again, it may be that the so-called the non-military use of trade, if you like, even though it is being militarized, is brought to bear. I think we just have to watch and see what happens day by day. I don't particularly rate Nancy Pelosi. I don't think many people in the United States do. I think, again, what's being played here, I'm not sure about China, never really know what they think, but I can certainly tell you that the United States domestically is looking forward to the midterm elections, and really this is playing away from home, and the American, exactly as you quoted, the so-called American way. Well, how long that'll actually last, I don't know. I don't think anybody does. We have to watch it day by day. But certainly Taiwan, as I said to you earlier on in my report, is seeing these military drills as a sort of blockade on their normal kind of exporting, which is the biggest one, of course, semiconductors to the rest of the world.
Okay, still on Taiwan and China. Now, China continues to insist on one China rule. In Taiwan, in Hong Kong, the Americans, they know this very well, but the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ms. Nancy Pelosi, chose to go ahead with that visit. Provocative, it would seem. But do you think that this could lead to serious economic consequences, as some analysts are positing? They're saying that China, for example, apart from those warships that they are putting around the eastern part of Taiwan, could decide to block the Taiwan Strait. If they do that, we will have a situation worse than what we have in Ukraine at the moment. And then beyond that also, some people have talked about the possibility of World War III. Or do you think that China, to use your popular phrase, is just showboating? Beyond that, then of course the issue with Penguin Random House and Simon and Schuster trying to come together, and the Department of Justice in the US saying no, you cannot have a merger because this will be anti-competitive. And Stephen King, a very prolific novelist, weighing in and saying, well, yes, it will affect the interests of authors. What do you think? Is really the problem here? Because I would have thought that if Random House, Penguin, and Simon and Schuster, if they come together, that may even translate into better opportunities for authors.
Well, I think, as far as better opportunities for authors are concerned, all I would urge you to do is just to have a look at the amount of self-publishing that's going on at the moment, and the amount of real publishing that's going on at the moment. And it always amazes me that bookshops and authors actually make any money. I suspect they don't. I think the likes of Stephen King certainly do when they're massive bestsellers. But I think if you speak to authors, they'd be saying, well, right at the top, these people make a lot of money. Underneath it, they don't make a great deal of money. I've never really understood. I mean, it's important to write things and all the rest of it. I wouldn't stop that at all. I think it's a very good idea. But to actually do it as a profession making money, I've got friends who left journalism and are writing now and don't make a great deal of money at all about it. I mean, there's a lot of money in academic work, as I understand it, but certainly not in fiction. As far as the two getting together, I mean, this is one for the competition authorities, isn't it, really? Stephen King can say what he likes, basically. I mean, it's down to the competition authorities. It might or might not be better for the reader. Personally, I have no knowledge of publishing houses at all. I go in, I see a review of a book, I read about it in the newspaper over the weekend, and I buy it and I read it. I don't care who publishes it, to be honest, whether it be electronic publishing or actually hardback publishing. I don't know. I think hardbacks are relative. I don't know what they're like with you. They're relatively expensive over here, over £20 for a hardback, and yet on something like Kindle, you can get it for about £10, and that's the way I tend to go. I don't care who publishes it, to be honest. As far as China's concerned, yeah, I think it's a huge amount of showboating going on, but there is a definite difference between, as I said before, about what Taiwan thinks about itself and what China thinks about it, which is pretty clear. Taiwan thinks it's autonomous and self-governing and doesn't want to fall under the thrall of China. China thinks very differently about it. China, of course, I think, will be looking very closely at the progress of Russia and Ukraine, because Taiwan will defend itself. There's no question about that. They have many, many defences, and the level of attrition will be played out on the world stage, perhaps a little bit more than has been seen in Russia. It'll be interesting to see how China reports actually what goes on. As far as the world economy is concerned, yes, I think there will be certainly trade implications about this, but more immediately, Taiwan itself is saying that these exercises, as I said, are in fact a blockade against semiconductor supply, which, as you know, is crucial for the rest of the world.
All right. Michael, great to see you again, and good to see you in Nigeria a couple of days ago. I'd like to ask, this debate about cutting taxes in the UK, it is obvious that it's going to cost the UK some money. If Liz Truss's plan goes through, it will cost the UK £30 billion, because that's the sum total of the money in taxes that Liz Truss will be giving back to the people. And that's going to impact the UK revenue and the UK economy, vis-a-vis Rishi Sunak's plan of let the economy reflate, and a couple of years down the line, then you can cut the taxes. Is this not the time to say the truth and not be political? Because can the UK afford to add extra £30 billion burden to where it is today?
No, I mean, look, you're not wrong. Of course, it's the time every time is the time to speak the truth. But we've got two people vying for the Conservative Party leadership, and also to be Prime Minister of the country. What you put your finger on is this: that the difference is it's about timing and it's about the amount. And honestly, you can play around with amounts and you can play around with timing until the cows come home. You and I could sit down and work out when these tax cuts ought to be applied. What Sunak is now saying is the one that was mentioned in his budget, which is cutting it vaguely by about 2023, 2024, perhaps about 1 pence in the pound, and then 1 pence in the pound further on until 2029, 2030, when, lo and behold, we'll have a basic rate of, 16%, maybe. What Truss is saying, as I understand it right now, unless there's been a change in the last few minutes, which is entirely possible, given that they are politicians and they are in a race to be Prime Minister, she's saying, jam today or jam tomorrow, rather than jam in 3 or 4 years' time. Now, which is the best way to go? I don't know. The £30 billion, again, I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, and they were saying, there's the projections that were made 2 or 3 months ago, and things have changed dramatically. I feel much more that all right, so the Conservative Party will like the fact that they feel as though there are going to be immediate tax cuts. If they do that, it's extremely easy to take that to the doorsteps and say, look, I'm a member of a party that wants to have tax cuts. I think far more important is the level of fuel at the pumps and the cost of living crisis, which neither of these two has actually mentioned so far in their speeches. And thirdly, I don't think many people actually in their heart of hearts, even though I know what the examples of history are, believe that tax cuts reflate an economy. What reflates an economy is productivity. And that's absolutely key. The UK is not a very productivity-friendly country. That's where it lies. Now, if there were a party giving me the detail of how they were going to achieve that and what the chances are, then they would get my vote. I think that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now, our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Dr. Rufai. Good morning. Good to see you. Great apology there this morning. Good to see you back. We begin with the rich also cry. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has said that the high cost of diesel and also the exchange rate is impacting his business. He said this in his residence of Abeokuta at, get this, a convening of the Southwest Fish Farmers Price Stability Group. I did not know this group existed, but he essentially was saying that if the cost of producing fish has gone up, the cost of the diesel, which is impacting the mechanisms of trying to get fish production up, are also being impacted, and that fish production is going to be out of reach of the average fish farmer in Nigeria. Also, the president of the group, Amo Tubonsu, said that Nigeria currently consumes about 3.6 million metric tons of fish annually, but only produces 1.1 million, which means, the difference of 2.5 million metric tons needs to be imported. Obasanjo then said that, well, what that means now is that you will see other countries taking advantage of that, flooding the country with fish, and then essentially putting fish farmers in the poorhouse. He also talked, of course, about the fact that the mismanagement of the economy has put us where we are. Now, he's former president of the opposition party, and so he, of course, his comments are coming at a pretty crucial time where inflation is at 18.6%. Food inflation, where, of course, fish falls in, is at 20%. We're in a new month now of August, and about, today is what, the 2nd? The 3rd. We will be getting, in about 12 days, we'll be getting inflation for July, and I expect those inflation figures to climb. So that's with President Obasanjo. To rail, you were talking about terrorism earlier today. The Punch newspaper is saying that the Nigerian Railway Corporation has suspended its Lagos-Kano and Abeokuta routes as a result of fears of terrorism and attacks, basically. This, of course, just brings to bear everything you talked about this morning, or that clip that was played with that victim of the recent terror attacks on kidnapping of passengers. And look, the profitability of the NRC, that's already been called into question when you think about the fact that these trains are diesel powered, and you have to expect that that will impact their profitability. The fact that if this Punch report is in fact corroborated by the authorities, they're yet to speak on it, but if that happens, then they can't move. It's very similar to the aviation sector. I mean, think about this holistically. If you can't fly because tickets are too expensive and there are less planes and there's unreliability with schedules, and you can't use the trains because of terror attacks as a result of they're not being able to move around, and you can't drive by road because the roads are bad, and there's also kidnapping on the roads. I think over the next few months, we'll probably see an increase in virtual meetings. And I think the ISPs, the internet service providers, and the telcos are going to benefit greatly. Because if travel is out of reach and you can't go anywhere, they will have to resort to that. So I would keep an eye on the share prices of the telcos and how they perform over the next few months. In fact, speaking of how they perform, on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, you guys get this, blue chip companies are hesitant to talk about earnings. Can't mention who the companies are, but I talked to 4 of them in different sectors, asking their chief financial officers, even their CEOs, to come on the Global Business Report, as they've done in the past, and talk about their half-year earnings. And they said, Rotus, there's poverty in the land, prices are up, things are really tough. We cannot at this time come on air to talk about the billions of naira that we've earned. That would sound insensitive. I said, well, what about your shareholders? You've got shareholders who want to know how you're doing and what your expansion plans are. And they said, well, look, we've put out statements on the NGX, on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We have audited financials. Our CEO statements are there, so the shareholders can get whatever it is that they want to know from there. So quite striking, quite striking from some of these top blue chips. And just again speaks to where we are, that you've got big companies that are actually hesitant to come on talk about their earnings because of how it would look. Finally, Kenya. The Kenya Power is going to be testing electric vehicle charging stations. They're going to be conducting this test over the next 6 months. They want to explore e-mobility. There's been an interest in e-mobility. Kenya inflation just came out a couple of days ago. It increased, I think, 8.3%. Meanwhile, a few days ago, before that, the Monetary Policy Committee decided to hold their rates at 7.5%. So I wonder how wise that move turns out to be. But then maybe it was a wise move because they think that inflation will decelerate. Remember, elections are next Tuesday in Kenya. So very, very crucial times. But they're going to be testing electric vehicle stations. They believe that there is an interest because of the high costs of fuel. But I think according to the Ministry of Energy, 2018, there were only about 350 electric vehicles in Kenya. They want to carry that amount, I think, to about 250,000 by 2040. So they will be testing them in Nairobi and Nakuru. I think Nakuru is northwest of Nairobi. So yeah, we'll see how that works out for Kenya.
I mean, it's a great point you made about the rich also cry.
They do.
And I remember that soap opera.
Yeah.
Because it affects all of us. If the price of diesel is on the increase, there's no how it will not feed back to each and every one of us in society.
Yeah.
And that's what we're beginning to feel. Nobody will say that, oh, I am so rich, I'm so bold, that I will not feel the impact of diesel that rose from over 200 naira to about 800 naira thereabout.
Right.
And not only former President Olusegun Obasanjo, realtors have had to jack up their rates. In fact, most people have had to change their terms of agreement for service charge. Because of this increasing and killing rates.
Yeah.
And it's only going to increase if we don't do the needful. We need to be able to have a roadmap where we say, okay, this is when we want to build refineries. We can't keep depending on the Dangote refinery like it's a silver bullet to every of our problems.
Yeah.
We need the Dangote refinery and other refineries in the country.
We do.
Most importantly, government needs to try as much as possible to ensure that it has fiscal discipline, the way it spends money, and that's why subsidy needs to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Crude oil theft needs to be stopped. I'm happy in the recent days we've already seen the Navy come out with reports that they've arrested a couple of people as regards crude oil theft. We need to intensify efforts. And if they're doing anything, it will be reflective in the numbers.
I was about to say that.
We churn out.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Because
if it's working, oil production will go up.
During the time of President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, blessed memories, once he had that deal with the militants in the Niger Delta, our production surge
went up. Right.
So we saw the direct correlation.
Exactly.
These are empirical facts on ground.
Exactly.
And cost of living crisis is everywhere in the world. But governments have buffers. But the problem with us in Nigeria is that because we don't have enough to throw around as government, then there are no buffers to be able to cushion the effect on the lives of people.
Inflation. It's 18.6%, right?
That's correct, yep.
Unemployment rate is
33.
Over 33%.
As of Q4
33.3. Yeah.
Probably higher now.
Okay, so it's probably about 50% now.
Who knows? Yeah,
when you look at the absolute unemployment figure.
Right.
So you say the rich also cry. This is President Olusegun Obasanjo, two-time head of state, head of government, president of Nigeria, lamenting that, in fact, it's difficult now to sell fish. Fish Farmers Association of Nigeria is a farmer, so he knows what he's talking about. He says to produce a kilogram of fish will cost you about 1,400.
Yep.
The best you can do is to sell it at 1,500. Right. I think that is, a very good description of the tragedy in which we have found ourselves in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Because growing up, fish was food for poor people. They call it okweko. Yoruba people call it okweko because rich people they didn't eat fish. They thought fish was for poor people. It was only later that we started hearing the sociology, that fish is a good source of protein and all that. If you were rich, you will eat meat to show that you are there. Even now, these old poor people, they can't have access to fish. They can't have access to that source of protein because it has become very expensive. Okay, the rich also cry. The cynical person will say that, well, why is President Obasanjo crying? He was head of state. He was, president of Nigeria. So if fish, nobody can eat fish again, who is he blaming? They should say, well, he should think about a comment on his own legacy. But perhaps he would defend himself and say that he did his bit for Nigeria. He didn't imagine that a government will come that will crash the foreign exchange and introduce policies that will put Nigeria in the doldrums.
Right.
So the truth of the matter is that we are all involved, both the highly placed and the lowly placed, as has been demonstrated by the other story that you brought about the trains not working, and the Nigerian Railway Corporation, which is in charge of rail transportation in Nigeria, saying that they are suspending operations along the Ajaokuta route, Warri-Itakwe line up to Ajaokuta. Okay. We said this the other time when they had issues with the Kaduna-Abuja train line. They said, oh, they will go ahead with it. They will not suspend operations. Now it's very clear. Bandits are attacking travelers on every rail line. I won't be surprised if we wake up tomorrow and we're told again that the Lagos-Ibadan rail line has also been suspended. Yeah. The operation has been suspended. Yeah. Why is this the case? There was no provision in the design for security. These are rail lines that go through, unguarded spaces, unmanned spaces. And so when you travel by air, you are vulnerable. Now, don't forget, we borrowed $500 million, right?
Chinese.
Or more from the Chinese. Yep. The China Engineering Corporation that is in charge of these rail lines. Okay, when we suspend these operations, we're running at a loss. We still have to pay that money back. Right. So this is another dimension of the tragedy. Yep. And then many Nigerians, of course, will not want to travel with the danger that is there. So this is failure of policy, failure of thinking, failure of the state, of the Nigerian state. Now it's been confirmed, you can't travel by rail. Right. You can't travel by road. Yeah. Okay, you do so at your own risk. Because you have to move from one place to the other. You can't travel by air. It's so expensive. You were saying the other day that it was a 55,000 naira economy. I told you no, it's more than that. By now you must know that even to travel economy is very expensive. So are we going to start trekking very soon?
Or stay home?
This is how bad it is. Yeah. And yet we have politicians who want to be governors, presidents. They have no ideas, no concrete ideas about how to address this issue. They're just busy abusing each other, making statements and all of that. And you just look at it and say, how did Nigeria get here? A country of brilliant people, talented people. Anyway, that's our reality.
Well, those guests that you're trying to woo on your show to come and brandish their billions are probably hesitating because of what's been happening elsewhere. The backlash against British gas, British petroleum, because of their staggering profits. They've been accused of profiteering at people's expense. Right. So I guess they don't want that either. People do have to show some kind of sensitivity in the fraught times that we live in at this point. Thank you so much, Reuters.